Hello and welcome to Honey Badger 3D Print and Paint. Today, let's take a look at Mysterio. Before we make a start, roll those credits. Okay, so today we're having a look at Mysterio. So banana for scale for anybody who wants to try and figure out how big this is before I say the dimensions. As you can see from me, I'm quite tall. So there's a mix of FDM and resin in this. The only real resin part is the skull and the helmet. So they were actually remixed. The original file had the dome, but the dome was completely solid. I didn't really like the effect. The idea is that Mysterio's face is supposed to be like all smoke, but I didn't really like that. And then it had a head option, but the head was without the helmet. So we took the helmet as a solid model, we hollowed that out in Mesh Mixer, and then we found a skull that we liked on Thingiverse. We scaled that down, remixed it, and stuck that in instead. So the helmet is not perfectly clear, as you can see. It is quite hard to get resin to stay clear. This resin is Monocore Rapid, and it is their clear resin. What we did with this was we printed it, and then we left it to basically drip dry on the machine for about 12 hours. Then we gave it about 3 coats inside and out of a polyacrylic, just a clear gloss spray. Then we left that to dry. Then we put it in its curing bucket so that it would actually get cured. Because of the size of this, I actually had to have Arif at 3D Filer Print print this for me. They've just got their hands on an Ellie Goose Satin. So it's a nice big build volume, and that wouldn't fit on my Photon. The skull is also, the skull inside is also printed in resin, and that came out really nicely. All I did with that was sprayed it black and used a silver rub and buff to go over the top to try and bring out some of the highlights. You can't necessarily see it unless you're quite close. But basically the skull has got loads of like ghosts in it and sort of like, you know, things like that. I'll put the link to the skull in the description in case anybody wants to just print the skull, because it's pretty cool. Everything else is FDM. So all of this, all the large parts printed on my 2 sidewinders. So the cape I had to split. The smoke all printed as one, and that took, so all the smoke that comes up all the way around here and all sort of spirals around, that was a 135-hour print on its own. That was probably one of the longest single prints I've ever done. There's probably about 300 hours all in printing it start to finish. As always, the parts that take the longest to do are capes. So capes are very organic shapes. As a result of which what you end up having is a lot of flowing, billowing movements, and organic shapes are really quite difficult to print because they have really savage overhangs and everything else. The idea of a cape is to look like it's billowing and flowing, not to be necessarily easy to print. So that had to get split up. You can see at the back that I haven't done the best job sanding and filling. You can actually still see some of the join lines. To be honest with you, there's only a set and finite amount of time I can dedicate to each one of these projects. And I do try to do my best with the time that I have, but that time isn't infinite. You know, I don't really have the time to be able to sit down and spend 20 hours just filling and sanding the cape to get it perfectly smooth. It's at the back of the model anyway. I don't think it really affects the front. So you know, I still think the effect is really good. The colours that I used. So the green is Emerald Siren, I think it's called, from Green Stuff World. They have some really nice metallic paint sets that give almost an iridescence to when they when you put them on, and I really like them. They came out really nice. The gold is all a Dark Star gold that I had, and almost all of this is painted by airbrush, except for these gold parts, because these just needed to be hand brushed on. Size wise, so he's 950 tall, he's about 350 wide and 350 back. Most of that is because his cape just billows out a little bit more than it probably should. Given the choice, I would always do a fabric cape that I would just make myself rather than a plastic one. The main reason for that is just the sheer amount of filament that capes use because of their size, and again the amount of supports that are required. A real cape always looks real and looks better. I wouldn't have had to have painted it, which would have been very nice. Unfortunately, this cape came with both the key for his head and this sort of like collar piece, and I didn't really want to spend the time, you know, cutting that and removing the cape altogether. This was the case as well on my Sauron model that I did. That I think you can take a look back. It's actually at the shop, 3D filer print for now, just because I haven't got any space. But again, the cape on Sauron took probably twice as long as the rest of the actual model. Now, Sauron was a GAN body model, and as a result, I actually could have printed him without the cape. I didn't realise quite how bad the cape was going to be until I started it, and by that point I'd started. So anyway, this is all done in PLA, except obviously for the resin. The PLA is all eSun, which is available at 3D Filler Print. They've just started stocking it now, so I really wanted to try and do something big to really show what the eSun PLA was capable of. As you can see, it's just as capable as any other materials we've been using. We tended to use Filer Print's own brand PLA, or we'll occasionally use Filamentum. But the reality is that is costly. There's about 5 kilos of filament in this, because the base is quite large and the smoke is really big. I mean, he's a large model overall. So it would have been expensive to have done him all in Filamentum. eSun is cheaper, and as you can see, gives a really nice finish. To any and all modelers out there, texture hides so many sins. So you can see on the close-up that was earlier that this has got like a cross-hatch design on it. That texture on this suit means that it hides layer lines a lot better, it hides joins a lot better, and it hides surface imperfections when you've done where you've got a support interface layer. It's by far, whenever I've had a textured print, it comes out infinitely better than really any smooth surface. If you tune your printer properly, you can absolutely get super smooth results. But this is all done at a 0.2 layer height, and really at 0.2 you should be able to see the layer lines. You know, if you don't want to see layer lines and you want your print to look like the whole thing's done in resin, you need to be going down to 1.6, maybe even down to 1.2, so that you can really get that fine finish. The hands were done, and the feet were both done on my Prusa Mark III clone, and they came out really nicely. Again, I probably could have spent a little bit more time cleaning up parts of this, but it does come down to a crunch time. You know, you can spend, 150, 200 hours prepping, finishing, and dealing with your model after the fact, and you will get something that looks, store-bought. Personally, I don't mind that my prints look 3D printed. I quite like the effect. So the model was a private commission, I'm afraid, so I can't give you the link to that, but I will put the link for the skull in the description. That was a Thingiverse model, so big shout out to the chap who designed that, because it's really cool. And then I will eat this banana. So thanks very much for joining us, guys. We've got quite a lot of the pipe work at the moment. So Mike has just finished his tree beard. Check that video out just here. I've got a Batmobile, a 1990s Batmobile from Gambody, Michael Keaton one, coming up. So that's going to be really cool. I have a Stargate model in the works. So that's definitely something you're going to want to check out, because that one's quite cool. Mike is also doing an ATAT model, but he's doing it with a bit of a twist. So that's going to be a cool model as well. And we've got some more content coming this year. So thanks for joining us, guys. Do not forget to like this video and subscribe. It does genuinely help us when you subscribe. It allows us to get more printers and convince more people to sponsor us, so that we can, bring you guys more content. So thanks very much for joining. See you all soon.